Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of June 12th. And I'm still Michael James here with Euan Hague. And Euan has gotten us our next guest. And I'm going to let Euan do the introduction. So take it away, brother.
Great, thanks. And I'd like to introduce a guest, Nabeela Washington. And Nabeela and I first met Nabeela through her work with Lucky Jefferson, which is arts literature nonprofit. So maybe, Nabeela, tell us a little bit about, a couple of years ago that was, but tell us a little about Lucky Jefferson and your role there and what that organization does.
Yeah, Lucky Jefferson is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're an arts publisher, so we publish poetry, flash fiction, creative nonfiction, and art. We also put on creative writing workshops. We do research, which is, I believe, how you and I connected. So at that time, 2022, I think, we had received a grant from Illinois Humanities to really document and investigate belonging among artists and writers of color, especially on Chicago's west and south sides. Outside of research and publishing literary arts, we also have a creative arts education program for students to be able to practice their art outside of the classroom. And that's really important because there are fewer and fewer spaces where students can get that real world experience. But my role there is editor-in-chief. So I am working with volunteers, working with these students, working with a number of writers and artists on any given day to bring our books and zines and workshops to life.
Yeah, and I think one of the things in that study we found about feelings of lack of representation, feelings that all our publishing is still, doesn't really recognize all the voices in our communities, and you're trying to amplify those.
Right. And I think it's interesting because even, I think earlier this year, last year, there's been research on the number of companies that have since dropped their, DEI commitments, that have kind of pulled out of communities of color, or that have, stopped publishing or endorsing people of color for whatever reason. But yeah, our research really meant to understand why this is such a pain point, and why people of color just struggle to get access to different spaces that other communities may, not have as much of an issue gaining access to.
Yeah, so that's your work with Lucky Jefferson, which is looking at creativity, fiction, poetry. Now you're switching with a new organization, 15 West, towards journalism and news reporting. So tell us a little bit about 15 West. And one thing right away is these names you come up with for the organizations. What is 15 West? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I'll explain Lucky Jefferson. So Lucky Jefferson, the name behind that was like a typo in a text message with one of my best friends. And this happened before 2015. So I don't remember. And I've upgraded my phone a couple times since then. But 15 West, it means 15 miles west of downtown Chicago, and that represents our coverage area. So we are connecting with communities. We are training residents on media literacy and writing on anything within 15 miles of downtown Chicago, all the way to, I think that's like Bellwood, Illinois. So that's like North Lawndale, Garfield Park, Little Village, Oak Park, Forest Park, Humboldt Park, downtown, even though downtown has plenty of coverage. So it's a pretty, not the whole state, but it's a pretty expansive area. But that's what 15 West means. And it happened under Lucky Jefferson, because Lucky Jefferson is a 501c3. So that means that we have the opportunity to be considered for grants. And one grant that we received last year was from the Cook County Digital Equity Department in partnership with City Bureau. And City Bureau is a wonderful community journalism lab out of Bronzeville, and we had a grant to kind of spearhead this new newsroom where we would be training residents and paying them, compensating them after they completed the training, improving their media literacy, helping them to understand reporting, because not everyone can afford to go to school. Not everyone can stay in school, especially with how expensive it is. And some people just don't have the interest, and I don't blame them. And so it's really like addressing that emerging and growing need. And we kind of retroactively started the newsroom as proof of concept, and then we had the media literacy workshops, and then at that time we were working with you on news accessibility research, which is really meant to understand what people with varying abilities, so dyslexia, ADHD, blindness, deaf, mobility issues, different things like that. And I don't think newsrooms take that into consideration when they are delivering the news. Generally in journalism, it assumes that everyone can comprehend and absorb or digest a story the same way. But what we're seeing and what's been on the news repeatedly, especially if you tune into like Chalkbeat and other more education focused beats, is literacy is, struggling. It's been on the struggle bus since before the pandemic, but there was a stat that said, I believe over half of the US does not read at the appropriate reading level. And so it's like, okay, well, if half the people don't understand what they're reading, then like, how can we reach them? Are they even informed about what's going on in their neighborhood? Do they even know how to take part in a protest or where to go to vote, or just taking simple actions to be more civically engaged? And so we're taking a step back because we had like legacy media, you've got all these other outlets that can do the mainstream stories. And it's like, okay, we're going to do something more niche, and we're going to try to really think about what it will look like to think about accessibility and lean into that for news and for journalism.
Nabeela, let me ask you about what your thoughts are, your predictions are about community journalism. I've seen stuff on the air. I watch a lot of CNN and MS Now, as well as the legacy news outfits. And I think there's a shift going on about how people are getting their news. What's your prediction about the importance of what the community news is and what you're doing?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's no secret that people are getting their news not from like traditional sources anymore, not from even print media, but from social media. And what you're seeing now is people are going to trusted influencers or newsfluencers for different information. And I think that's just going to increase. But that also means that that's going to put more responsibility on newsrooms to partner and educate those people on the ethics of journalism and how to kind of like disseminate the truth and disseminate stories or kind of like what's going on in the community. And I love that this is happening. It's kind of scary. Like, I guess if you are traditional journalism, I didn't go to school for journalism, but I did go to school for communications, and I'm studying photojournalism right now. But I think things need to be less gate kept, if that's the right framing. And I think the more you invite people into your newsroom or into the way that you build these stories, the more you're going to see literacy improve, the more you're going to see people showing up to vote, being more engaged instead of disengaged, instead of just complaining online, trolling online. You're going to see people in the streets because they're going to be educated and they're going to feel like they have a space to belong and a space to share their voice, because that's really one of the large things that I think it boils down to is just being seen and having like our basic needs met. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have to wrap it up now. So Nabeela, just a quick last few seconds on how people can find your organizations.
Yeah, 15west.org. We're 15 West News on Instagram, 15west.org on Blue Sky. We're not on Twitter. And LuckyJefferson.com. We're on everything. Lucky Jefferson IG, Lucky Jefferson LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, unfortunately.
X, you got to call it X.
Yeah.
Hey, Nabeela, I look forward to talking to you about photojournalism. I take a lot of photos, and I really like what younger people are doing on this front. So we'll hope to have you back on.